There's a version of you that you imagine. They're confident. They don't overthink before they speak. They don't apologize for taking up space. They walk into rooms like they belong there, not performing it, just living it. And somewhere, underneath all of that, you have made a quiet decision. You've decided that version of you costs money, that they're on the other side of a number, a salary, an account balance. A moment when the financial pressure finally lifts and the real you can finally come out. You've been planning to become yourself once you can afford it. And I want to ask you something uncomfortable. What if the money arrives and that version of you doesn't? My name is Sam. I spent years obsessing over the existential side of money, not how to make more of it, but why it has such a grip on how we feel about ourselves. Why being broke feels like a moral failing. Why financial success never delivers the self-worth it promises. I've gone deep into the psychology, the research, the history of why we are the way we are with money. And what I keep finding is that the real problem almost never starts in the bank account. You have a specific ritual when you open your banking app. You don't just look, you brace. There's a half second before the number loads where something in your body tightens. And depending on what appears, either you put the phone down feeling briefly okay, or you put it down feeling like you've been given a verdict. Not a financial verdict, a personal one. You've rehearsed how you explain your job at a certain kind of party, not the job itself, what you say about it. There's a version where you lead with the title, a version where you lead with what you're building toward, a version where you make it sound like a choice rather than a landing. You run the calculation in about 0.3 seconds. Who is this person? What will they assume? And what do I need to say so they don't underestimate me? That's not a conversation. That's a performance of a person who has it more together than they do. And you know exactly where you rank among the people you grew up with. Not officially, but you know. You've done the math, the salaries you've pieced together from LinkedIn, from what people let slip at dinners, from who bought a house and when. And when someone crosses above you, something specific happens in your chest. Not quite jealousy, something colder. Like falling slightly behind in a race you never agreed to run. And here's the one that's harder to admit. There are things you haven't bought, not because you can't afford them, because of what buying them would mean. The course that would signal you're taking something seriously. The piece of clothing that belongs to a version of you who's already arrived. You're waiting to become someone before you let yourself have the things that person has. And the becoming is always just on the other side of a better financial situation. So you carry a fantasy, specific, detailed. You've pictured the apartment, the actual layout, which part of the city. You've pictured the conversation where someone asks what you do and you don't have to manage your face. You've pictured calling your mother and just telling her a number without also having to reassure her. In this fantasy, you're not just richer, you're finally legible. To yourself, to the people whose opinion you've been quietly carrying for years. The money is almost incidental. What you're really picturing is being someone who no longer has to manage what people think of them. And you have decided, without ever fully deciding, that that costs a specific amount. There's a reason we do this. In developmental psychology, there's a concept called the future self. The idea that human beings can imagine a version of themselves that doesn't exist yet and use that image as motivation to act. This is genuinely extraordinary. No other animal does this with the same complexity. It's one of the things that makes us human. But here's what the research shows. For most people, the future self is not experienced as me. Psychologist Hal Hirschfield at UCLA used neuroimaging to compare how people think about their current self versus their future self. What he found was striking. When people imagined their future self, the brain activity looked much more like thinking about a stranger than thinking about themselves. The future you, that confident, financially sorted, finally arrived version, is not you in your mind. They're a fictional character, someone you've been writing for years, given them a backstory, a wardrobe, a way of moving through rooms. And because they're a stranger, we treat them the way we treat strangers. We project onto them. We expect them to solve problems we haven't solved. We assume they'll have healed things that are currently still open wounds. We are not saving money. We are funding a stranger we hope will show up and fix things. The problem is, that character is carrying emotional weight that money was never designed to carry. Because the insecurity, the feeling of not being enough, the belief that you need to be further along before you deserve to take up space, those things don't have a price. They have a history, and the history is almost never financial. In 2010, psychologist Tim Kasser at Knox College published decades of research on what he called the high price of materialism. He had been studying two types of people who organize their lives around financial goals, wealth, possessions, status, and people who organize their lives around intrinsic goals, relationships, personal growth, contribution. The findings were clear. People who primarily chased material goals reported lower life satisfaction, higher anxiety, more depression, worse relationships, even when they succeeded. Here's the part that matters. It wasn't failure that caused the damage. Success caused it too, because the emotional need that drove the financial goal was still there after the goal was met. The hunger was never for money. The hunger was for something money kept promising and never delivering. This has been confirmed outside the lab as well. Studies of lottery winners, people who received sudden, life-changing windfalls, show a consistent pattern. Low self-esteem before the money, low self-esteem after. Anxiety before, anxiety after. Often worse, because now there's more to lose. Difficulty with relationships before the money doesn't fix the relationships. It frequently breaks the ones that survived the poverty. What you bring into the money, you take with you inside it. And there's a third layer from psychologist Nathaniel Branden, who spent 40 years studying self-esteem specifically. He made a distinction that most people never hear. There's self-esteem that is earned through external achievement, the promotion, the salary, the apartment. And there's self-esteem that is built internally through repeated acts of integrity, self-respect, and showing up for yourself. Branden's conclusion, after decades of clinical work, was direct. You cannot purchase the second kind with the first. The technology does not work that way. The wound that makes you brace before the banking app loads came from somewhere else entirely, and it will not heal on a spreadsheet. Every year you spend waiting for wealth to fix how you feel, you are not working on the actual thing that needs working on. The confidence you want doesn't live in an account. It lives in accumulated evidence that you showed up for yourself, that you did hard things, that you didn't disappear when it got uncomfortable. That evidence can only be built in time. It cannot be purchased. And while you tell yourself, once I sort the money, I'll sort the rest, you are practicing something. You're practicing deferral. You're practicing the belief that you are not enough yet. That practice compounds. Every year of believing I'll be okay when I have more is another year of training your nervous system to make okayness conditional on external outcomes. By the time the money arrives, if it arrives, you won't suddenly feel whole. You'll feel the same way about a bigger number because you spent years making that the habit. So what does this actually mean in practice? It means two things can be true at once, and you have to hold both. Work on the money, absolutely. Build the income, close the debt. Take it seriously. Financial stability is real and it matters. And simultaneously, stop outsourcing your personhood to the outcome. Psychologist Carl Rogers called this unconditional positive regard, the experience of being valued not for what you produce, but for simply existing. Most of us never received that cleanly, so we went looking for it in achievements, in salaries, in reactions from people we wanted to impress. The actual work, is to locate the part of you that doesn't need the number to feel okay. Not to stop wanting more, not to abandon ambition, but to stop making your fundamental acceptability conditional on a financial event that may or may not happen on your timeline. Here's the exercise I want you to try this week. Write down what you think you'll feel like when you have enough, not the things you'll own. The feeling. Specific words: safe, respected, free, seen. Whatever yours actually is. Then ask yourself, where else in my life could I create that feeling right now? Even partially, even imperfectly, because what you'll find almost every single time is that the feeling you're chasing with money, you already have access to it. It just doesn't come with a wire transfer. If you've ever caught yourself thinking, I'll feel better about myself when I have more money, drop a comment below. Because you've just met the fictional character you've been funding, and maybe it's time to stop waiting for them to show up and start becoming them, starting with who you are right now, with whatever is in the account today.